Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran, and today we are checking out the story of Billy the Kid in a Fridge from Fallout 4. And we're going to be answering the question, in an apocalypse, are people really this horrible? Let's get into it.
This is the story of Billy the Kid in a fridge. Southeast of Jamaica Plain, close to a military convoy, you hear a voice calling out to you from the side of the road.
Is someone there? I can hear you. Get me out of this thing.
Is someone in there?
Let me out.
Who are you?
My name is Billy. Please. I've been trapped in here for so long.
How did you end up in there?
I hid in here to get away from the bombs. But there isn't a handle on the inside, and it's really dark in here.
The bombs were over 200 years ago. You're that old?
I don't know how long I've been in here.
Okay, right away, guys, I'm going to tell you something. Human beings in prolonged periods of isolation tend to what mental health professionals call decompensate. And this is a changes to the brain, changes to the affect that are pretty severe. It's tough to explain exactly. They affect kind of everyone differently. And luckily, there's not that many people who have experienced long periods of isolation. Oftentimes, prisoners who are put in solitary confinement for years will experience significant changes to their personality. They will become much more fearful of change. It can be really traumatizing. And these sort of traumas are magnified when done to children, right? The adult brain, right, is fairly fixed in terms of how it will develop. In contrast, a child's brain is much more plastic and malleable. This can be good in a lot of ways. It allows them to bounce back from severe brain injuries that would cripple an adult, but it can also be bad. It can affect them. It means bad experiences, negative experiences can affect them tremendously throughout their lives. And in the case of a kid being trapped in a dark refrigerator for 200 years, it would produce a frightening array of psychological problems.
A long time, though. A really long time. Please. I don't want to die in here.
You might be lying.
I'm not, I swear. I got inside to be safe. Now I
Sorry, I
can't
know
get out.
sipping the coffee is
If
annoying.
I try
I'll try to
something,
stop.
you can shoot me.
It's the morning.
No way. You're lying.
You son of a bitch. You can't do this. Don't leave me here.
Let me think about it.
You're just gonna leave me in here? Don't go. Come back.
You still there?
Let me out.
I'm just looking for the mayonnaise. Maybe you could grab it for me. Second shelf, right next to the pudding.
That's not funny. That's not funny at all. What kind of horrible person would say that to a kid stuck in a refrigerator? Besides...
I love how his compatriot is fighting something in the distance and he is just trolling a kid in a refrigerator.
I ate the pudding a long time ago.
Let me open the door for you.
Yes, it's been so long.
Okay, here's another important point to acknowledge, is that while different animals have different animals, plants, they have different metabolism life cycles. For example, a seed, right, can often last in proper storage for a long time and still germinate into a fully grown plant when subjected to the right conditions. However, a bear obviously can go months without eating during its hibernation cycle. But, and there's other species that can go dormant for long periods of time. But there's no one who can work around physics. And the basic physics means that there always has to be some metabolism. No form of life is able to fully stop all metabolic function. You just can't do it. So if you're talking about a kid, right, thinking, maintaining respiration, a heartbeat, even the bare minimum, you're talking about around, give or take, 300 calories a day. Let's say we gee-whiz magicked this down to 150 calories a day, just to maintain some sort of fantasy minimal life state. Well, in that scenario, you would need, 200 years, 360 times 150 times 200, you're talking about millions and millions of calories this kid would need to function, to operate, just to stay alive. And so you understand that even if you were to do some gee whiz fantasy and shave off a couple of zeros, right? Make it so he needs only 15 calories a day to survive, the equivalent of one strawberry. You still would not be able to live for 200 years and maintain any sort of metabolic energy.
The door is stuck. You're gonna have to shoot it off. My legs are so stiff.
Now you have two options here. The first is that you can convince him that life is now hopeless, he'll never find his parents, and to leave him here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, you're out. See you later, kid.
Hey, you can't just leave me here. Can't you find some place for me to live?
You look like something that was left in the fridge too long.
Oh, yeah? Well, never mind. Can you help me get back home?
I hate to tell you this, but your parents are probably dead.
Get used to disappointment, kid. It's the way the world works.
Dead? You really think so?
Yes, I do. They've been gone for hundreds of years now.
Then I'm all alone. Who's going to take care of me? You?
You'll have to figure out your own life.
Yeah, kid. Welcome to the real world.
I love how it's like, Cat liked that. Okay. Yeah, it's true that they're in harder eras of human history. Childhood and being young was not treated with the sort of generous kid glove attitude that we have today. It would be common even just 100 years ago for someone at the age of 15 to leave the home, strike out, make their own fortune in the world. Or if you're a man. If you were a woman, it would be get married and have kids, which at 15 is still sort of disturbing on a number of levels. If you have even the briefest of conversations with teenagers, you realize they probably aren't qualified to do anything. So when you look back at history books and you say, Mary Ann Smitherly had her third kid at 16, you're just like, oh my God, this is terrible. They must have been so clueless. But hardship, right, can sometimes force a level of maturing. How often have we seen the friend who is totally unable to live their lives, just complete train wreck, but when push comes to shove, when there's something they really need to get done, all of a sudden they're a creative genius and the hardest working, most focused person on earth. It's kind of bizarre, but it's how human beings work. And in previous eras, right, where just getting enough food to eat every day was a battle, the brain would focus you. And even as a child, even as a teenager, it would be able to deliver that level of focus. That said, in this is still someone who's, a child, not even a teenager at all. So would they be left on their own like this? Probably not. There seems to be a human instinct against harming young people. Now, obviously, sadly, there's lots of examples in the world of this not being the case, even in our world today. But oftentimes it requires a lot of sort of reprogramming to get people to view it that way. An example might be an invading army perpetrating harm on the children of the conquered city. And usually when those sort of things happen, it's because the invading army has been trained and propagandized to view the conquered people as being inferior or subhuman in some way. Similarly, when you have parents that harm children, there's, I think, often some sort of change to their mental status, whether it's through constant drug use, through a severe mental illness, right? It's not as common as you would think, but it can still happen. So in conclusion, I don't think we can draw a firm conclusion over whether or not human beings were more likely to treat children horribly in the past versus today.
Guess I'll just sit here until some monster comes and eats me. Thanks for nothing.
The second, of course, is to agree to take him under your wing and help him find his parents.
So, what's the story with you and that fridge?
It happened so long ago, back before everything got wrecked. When I heard the sirens, I tried to find someplace safe. When everything started to shake and fall apart, I just crawled inside. When it got quiet again, I tried to get out, but there isn't a handle on the inside. I just want to go home. Can you help me? Please?
Were your parents good to you?
Yeah, my dad was the best. My mom always took care of me.
Where did you live?
Quincy, but I don't know how to get there. Everything's so different. It's all blown up. I just want to find out what happened to my mom and dad.
Okay, if you were trapped in a lightless fridge for 200 years, you wouldn't even be able to see. Your eyes would become so your eyes would probably atrophy. I suspect, again, if you could somehow live for 200 years, I suspect that your eyes may actually be blind. But it's definitely true that people that have spent long periods of time in darkness will really struggle to see the sun. And again, it's not clear that it's just not clear how a human brain would process that level of isolation. Would he even be able to understand the objects he was seeing around him? Would there still be any processing power, any ability to process visual imagery at all? It's possible the brain would just shut those regions down. Especially given that you have to imagine that this, let's say he was a 10-year-old, right? So he's lived 10 years as a human being, as a regular person, and then another 200 years as a refrigerator-bound creature. Honestly, he may be, in the real world, he may be scared to leave the fridge. It may be terrifying to be forced out of the fridge.
You can travel with me, see the world, or what's left of it.
So you think I should give up trying to find my parents?
It's either that or go live by yourself. Your choice.
That's a scary idea. I want to look for my mom and dad. At least we can find out what happened to them.
Then let's go find your home.
Great. Now we have to watch this little brat.
As you leave the fridge while walking down the road trying to find his parents' house, a gunner named Bullet approaches you.
Cute kid. Is he for sale?
No. What kind of person are you?
The kind who does whatever it takes to survive out here.
Look, I don't want any trouble.
Just trying to make a living. So you want to
Beer has worn off. Oh, he was drunk for the first part of this.
tell that kid or not?
Never. Billy stays with me.
Suit yourself. If you change your mind, bring him to my camp.
Thanks, mister. You're all right.
If you tell him that you're not interested and to buzz off, he wanders off to his camp. His camp is actually quite a ways away. If you follow him to his camp, he sits down in a nearby chair where you can interact with him again.
Hey.
Lover's like, I do whatever it takes to survive, but then spends most of his time just sitting in a chair, like dicking around. This is also one of those weird things that, I mean, there's a lot of people that do this that are like, I'm a hard-working hustler, 24/7 on my grind, and then you look and they're like, you know, triple elite master in CSGO or something, and you're like, I can literally see that you've spent 2,000 hours in the past year becoming triple elite master at CSGO. Like, imagine if you had worked for even a few dollars an hour, right?
Changed your mind, huh? I'm still willing to buy that kid from you.
For the right price, yeah.
Please, don't sell me to this guy.
What's a ghoul child worth?
Hey, you can't sell me.
Plenty. I'll give you 200 caps. Ghouls are immune to radiation, don't age, and don't need to eat. You can work them real hard.
You can negotiate up to 500 caps for the child.
Only 200 caps? You can.
You negotiate up to 500. That's pretty funny. Yeah, this is actually, this is horrible. This is the worst, not the worst, one of the worst parts about human history is the part where, like, slavery and industrial capital, I'm getting demonetized, slavery and the early stages of capitalism overlapped, right? And I know this is like this is a topic with a lot of edgelords. In fact, almost everyone who talks about this is some breed of edgelord, and I hate them. But I'm going to try to keep this as academic as possible. Capitalism, or the idea that you invest money in a venture that will pay off a greater return in the future, right? Raising money for ventures with capital is when combined with the legality of human slavery, results in an industrial scale of slavery. And because it becomes less about, there was always conquered people being enslaved, forced to work for people who had conquered them. That's a constant in human history, right? Even the Bible has extensive passages condoning slavery because that was seen as just a natural outgrowth of the world, right? And so, of the world in which the Bible was written. But when you have a capital, when you view human beings as a capital investment, then you run into math like this, what he's talking about. You look and you say, what is the value of how much does it cost to care for a person throughout their productive life? How much does it cost? How much labor will you be able to extract from them? What is the value of the good or service they will produce with that labor? And then be able to decide on a price. So 200 caps, I imagine, especially given that this is a perfect worker, or nearly perfect, right? An adult would probably have more strength. Given this nearly perfect person here, this nearly perfect worker, 200 caps is probably a steal. The truth is that if you can work for infinite amounts of time, then the price you would be willing to pay is, well, infinite. Think about it. And this is unfortunately sort of the reality of this is another part of the like horror of human slavery, again, as it was practiced. And it's because if you invest in a male and female slave, then you can produce an infinite line of workers for free. You don't have to pay for additional ones. You just have to raise them to adulthood. So you end up with these sort of horrible, it's like everything that you hate about Wall Street and everything you hate about like crimes against humanity somehow merging right into one like mega horrible thing. That's what it is. It's like not only are you dehumanizing someone by forcing them to work for you, but you are literally turning them into a human commodity, turning the like fundamental nature of their humanity into a commodified act, like a chicken, right? And don't get me wrong, I love my chickens, but they're dumb. Their brains are like this big, right? So I don't feel tremendous guilt about the fact that their chicken lives are like less great, But like the full richness of a human experience reduced to a financial transaction it's just horrific, man.
Do better.
You're sharper than you look. 250, and I'll save you the hassle of carting him all over the Commonwealth.
That price is an insult.
All right. 300, and not a cap more.
Give me a break. I know what he's really worth.
Bro, what he's really worth is infinite money. It's an infinite money hack. Even if you worked him for 1 hour a day, right, you would get infinite money because he lives forever. Or at least the duration of your life, right? You could probably figure out how long you expect to live in a post-apocalyptic wasteland and figure out how much you would earn from 1 hour of work a day and multiply it, and then off you go.
Damn, you drive a hard bargain. Here's 350. I'm taking the kid.
Sold. Kid, I found you a new home.
Come on, kid. I got some holes that need digging.
You sold me! You asshole! You son of a bitch! I'll get you for this!
If you sell the kid into slavery to Bullet, Bullet immediately puts him to work. Bullet stands against the side of a building reading a newspaper.
Thanks for the
Doing what he has to do to survive, right?
freak. I'm gonna work him real hard.
While poor Billy digs through a pile of garbage.
Hey, Billy.
Asshole!
Alternatively, you can simply kill Bullet.
Don't let them hurt me!
Look, wiping the floor with you.
Even if you decide to sell Billy to Bullet, you can kill Bullet and resume the quest to help Billy find his family.
You sold me? Then you rescue me? Why?
I did it to trick Bullet into giving me the money.
Maybe you could have told me that. I thought you really sold me.
You're gonna show me where you lived, so I can loot it.
You want to steal
So I can loot your family
my
home.
baseball cards or something? We weren't rich. You aren't gonna find anything to steal there.
This will net you more caps in the end, but Billy still thinks that you're a jerk.
Billy,
Asshole!
I felt bad for selling you. I had to make it right.
You should feel bad. That was a rotten thing to do. At least you came back for me. Thanks.
Now, this quest, I think, was designed to be rather humorous, and it is funny listening to this sad voice call out from a fridge, but it raises some lore issues that are puzzling. The first is that Billy is the only child ghoul that we find in any of the Fallout games as far as I can tell. I was always under the impression that children were just too frail to survive long-term exposure to radiation, even if their genes predisposed them to turning into ghouls. The second is that he survived locked in that fridge for over 200 years without food or presumably water. If the fridge was airtight, then that means that he survived without air as well. This means that ghouls do not need air, water, or food to survive.
Yeah, he points out this is a real lore problem, right?
Which is really bizarre because ghouls are still humans even though they do have a genetic predisposition to surviving radiation damage. Now, I suppose we could think that the fridge was not airtight and that Billy was able to breathe. It's also possible that when it rained, water may have found a way to trickle in.
Like we talked about, 200 years, you would need tens of thousands of calories, or you would need millions of calories to survive.
Inside the fridge, collecting in a tray somewhere where Billy was able to drink it. But what is absolutely certain is that Billy ran out of food a long time ago. He even says that he finished off the last of the pudding. Bullet himself confirms that ghouls do not need food to survive. We learn a lot more about ghouls in this instance. We learned that becoming a ghoul halts aging. This reminds me of Interview with a Vampire, where the child gets bit by a vampire and ceases to age. Apparently the same thing happens with ghouls. This is something to bear in mind if you ever encounter a certain child synth. Synths don't age either, which means if you were to find a child synth, that synth would not age.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that they actually explore a little bit more in Interview with a Vampire, but I think it's worth exploring philosophically now, is that it would be hard to not age, obviously. But also, it may in a lot of ways be inhumane, right? We accept that there's a childhood in which your brain grows and develops. And as your brain grows and develops, you become more able to understand the world around you. Concepts that were incomprehensible to you as a teen or as a 5-year-old, right? We routinely engage with today. Oftentimes these are very complex, right? The more complex, obviously, the more you need an adult brain to comprehend them. Well, a lot of adult brains never get to that point at all. But so to bring a child into a world in which they will never fully comprehend and be able to understand, and that they will need continuous, constant care throughout their life, well, not throughout their life, forever, infinitely, could actually be seen as a pretty horrifically cruel thing to do and to subject a child to. This idea that they will never grow, they will never age, they will always be lost and scared in a confusing world and need the constant care of their parents. I mean, you wonder, again, after hundreds of years of it, would there be a belief that, hey, these kids have been sort of brought into a horror show in a way that typical adult ghouls just aren't subject to?
Some have argued that the fact that the child could never become an adult is reason enough to end that child's life. And here we find a ghoul child that could never age. Does the same logic apply? Does this mean that the child should die since he will never become an adult? Another thing to note is that unlike all other ghouls in the game, Billy's voice still sounds like a child's voice. Adult male and female ghouls have dark, raspy voices, apparently damaged by inhaling radiation. Perhaps this can be explained by Billy being stuck in the fridge for so long. He may have been exposed to radiation, but maybe he didn't inhale any radioactive dust or clouds that would damage his voice.
This is sort of weird. So inhaling radioactive dust is really bad. Did you shocker, right? News flash. But it's not bad because it does something to your vocal cords. It's bad because it gets in your lungs and irradiates everything. It's like swallowing uranium, right? It just sits here. And if you are a ghoul and you're naturally resistant to radiation, then, and that radiation can clearly, but the radiation can damage your vocal cords, then it's probably going to damage other key important organs. If something can fry your vocal cords, it's definitely going to be powerful enough to, burn out large portions of your lungs or your heart or pick your organ.
I know, I'm really stretching here trying to find a way to have this encounter make sense in the world. At any rate, we finally find Billy Peabody's house near the Quincy ruins. His parents are thrilled to find him.
Mom? Dad? Are you in there?
Billy! Billy?
Okay, I just want to point out, I think it's hilarious that, like, they're ghouls and their house is completely dilapidated. Like, just a complete wreck. It's like they're still people. They still, like, want to live in a decent house. Like, why would they let their house fall apart?
Son? Is that really you?
It's me. It's really me.
Oh my God! We thought you were dead.
What happened to you? You're all burned up like me.
We're ghouls, Billy. The radiation changed us. Looks like it did the same thing to you.
Don't worry about it, Billy. Your dad and I don't care what you look like. We still love you.
I love you too, Mom. I missed you guys. It's been so long.
The happy reunion is interrupted by a shout from outside. It is none other than Bullet, the very same gunner who tried to buy the child from you.
You there, in the
Maybe it's sort of
house.
intact.
I
It's
want
not.
those ghouls.
Also, listen, you don't want to live in a house where the foundation's coming apart, as this place obviously is. If you've seen the viral video of that house falling into the ocean in North Carolina, you know what I'm talking about. Though, okay. I need to put this out there because every time I see that video of the house like falling into the sea, you know what I'm talking about? And there's always some idiots in the comments who are like, why'd you build that house that close to the water? Why'd you just put it on stilts like that? Of course it was going to fall. Okay. It's in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which is basically a giant sandbar. And one of the things that happens to sandbars is that on the surf side, the side facing the open sea, hurricanes, storms, the routine just ebb and flow of the waves, but especially hurricanes and storms, are constantly pulling material off of the beach. The shoreline is constantly creeping forward. And the water then picks that sand up, brings it around the islands, and deposits it on the backside of the islands, usually. Now, because they've built a bunch of bridges and a bunch of roads, a lot of that depositing isn't happening. It's not flowing back to the backside of the island, but it's still being worn away. So that house was probably built 30 years ago, probably dozens, even hundreds of feet from the shoreline. But now the shoreline is right at the water's edge. Those houses are condemned. If you kayak around the Outer Banks, you'll see dozens of houses that are condemned, abandoned, and flush against the waterline,
Especially
waiting to collapse.
that kid. You can give him up peaceful like? or die trying to save them.
Why does he want me?
Oh my god, they want Billy!
They won't take us, Carol. At least not alive. Billy, get upstairs.
At this point, Bullet is no longer interested in negotiating and he will not sell the child.
How about I sell them to you?
I don't think so, stranger. Why should I buy what I can take?
Leaving you with three options.
This is a really sound logic, unfortunately. And one of the things that, people talk about in a post-apocalyptic situation is that you would revert to what we in the international relations call realism, which means that if you are powerful, you can do whatever you want to the people that are less powerful because you can kill them, right? So this is why this is the incentive for city-states to form confederations, but without a central government sort of enforcing order, you really can't do that. And the truth is, we see it every day in our lives. Is it fair or just that your internet service provider increases your bills like every year? You ever notice that's their MO? They give you a good intro offer and then after 12 months, they raise their prices, and you notice they just sort of creep upward year after year. And it's not fair. You don't agree to it. Changing the price is arbitrary. But here's the thing. They have an army of lawyers, and you're a broke guy. So you're never going to be able to, what are you going to do, sue them? They'll drag the lawsuit out for years and years. They'll bankrupt you just trying to get them to admit that they slowly raise their prices without your consent. So again, this is another example of if you're big, you can do anything you want. And if you're small, you just got to take it. And thankfully, we have a government that at least imposes some limits. Comcast can't, for example, have goons show up to your house and steal your TV and PC. But if there wasn't a central government, that would be exactly how things go. Basically, you can steal anyone who has enough power, enough weapons, and people under them can do anything they want.
The first is that you allow Bullet into the house with his gunners to take over the ghoul and his family.
You can have them. Why should I risk my life?
All right, boys. Let's collect our new workers. Stranger, you can just move along.
You coward. I hope the rats burn your eyes out.
Not much happens after this. They enter the house, force the adults to their knees, and occupy it forever.
Smart move not going up against us.
The second option is to pass a difficult speech check convincing Bullet that nobody is in the house.
The house is empty. Looks like they left in a hurry.
God damn it! All right, boys, we're heading south. Double time!
Shh! Everybody be quiet.
This causes Bullet and his gunners to turn tail and flee. If you follow them, they just wander through the swamp. They don't go anywhere interesting. The third and final option, of course, is to refuse to allow Bullet to take over the ghouls and to defend them.
Over my dead body. These people are under my protection.
I'll wear your...
Like we talked about, the incentive in a world governed by violence, your only option is to have powerful protectors. But those protectors, right, they need to be worth it, right? This is why, for example, NATO is such a powerful organization, because by treaty, every member is obligated to treat an attack on another member as an attack on themselves. This is why NATO ended up going into Afghanistan, because of the terror attack on U.S. soil in 9/11. That evoked Article 5, and NATO sent a mission to support the mission in Afghanistan. There was no NATO mission in Iraq, by contrast, because the Iraq invasion was not affiliated with any sort of terror attack against a NATO member. So, but that's a sort of the risk as well. If you're a small country and even if you have an agreement, ultimately, if you're a tiny country and defending you would involve a massive risk by your patron states, there's a chance they won't show up, right? A treaty is just a piece of paper, ultimately. And so this is sort of the danger that everyone incurs. And even when a country says, a large country doesn't have to abide by anything unless there's some incentives right? And so this is how it can be with people too. If these ghouls, right? Would you, if you are at the very end game and they called for you to come back and help them, would you do it? No, of course not. You're protecting them when it's convenient for you, when it doesn't involve a lot of your resources, but you would not want to have to come back and check on them every hour. It would be too much. And that's sort of the same incentive and risk that you run when you have a patron protector.
Eyeballs around my neck!
The secret is to provide that patron with something they can't get anywhere else. You have to trade. So let's say these ghouls were able to repair your power armor 100%. Well, then that's so valuable that you would actually come back every hour and make sure they're protected. You see what I mean?
Alternatively, you can avoid this firefight by killing Bullet after you first encounter him. Either way, the father of the house, Matt Peabody, rewards you.
Thank you for bringing us back our little boy and saving us from that man.
Thank Billy. He insisted we try to find you.
The bombs didn't kill us. Almost, but not quite.
So, how did you end up as ghouls?
We didn't make it to the shelter in time.
The door was shutting as the bombs fell. We both must have taken a lot of radiation.
I guess we were some of the lucky ones. Most folks die instead of becoming ghouls. Must be something in both our genes.
So that's why you guys look like me.
Yeah, Billy. That's why. Although it's really more why you look like us.
He's a good kid.
We wandered for a while, but eventually came back here. We've been living here ever since. Not really anywhere else to go.
Let me thank you. Take this.
And that's about it. Despite everything you went through to help this child, he still complains about his predicament.
Can't go outside and play. All my friends are dead. It's almost like being back in that fridge.
But at the same time, he's thankful.
I never thought I would see my mom and dad again. Thanks.
Companions are programmed to react to this encounter. Kate's reactions are interesting. She does not like taking the child with you, but she also despises it when you sell the child into slavery. This is possibly due to her own history, but we'll be getting into all of that in an upcoming video all about Kate. Now, I love Fallout 4, you know this, and I love the lore of Fallout 4. This particular encounter to me does not ring true. Not only does it have a number of lore issues, but honestly I've found the writing to be a little lazy and uninteresting. I would have preferred this encounter to be much more rich and in-depth. If we are going to have a child ghoul locked in a refrigerator for 200 years, I want to see some more realistic psychological damage done to this child.
I want to see more damage done to the child.
He hops out of the fridge, apparently none the worse for wear except for becoming a ghoul, despite the fact that he has not seen sunlight or talked with another human being for 200 years. I would have liked it if maybe he became a more long-term traveling companion. It would be great to show him this new world that he's entering for the first time, and it would have been...
Yeah, the other thing that's sort of funny and worth acknowledging is that seeing yourself, right? Seeing how you look. We do it all the time through cameras and mirrors, but a lot of people rarely got to look at themselves to see how they looked. Oftentimes, they wouldn't even necessarily perceive how much they had aged. You would have to catch your reflection in maybe a puddle or something. But no, most people, so there's no reason Billy would know when he emerged that he had even become a ghoul.
Nice for Bethesda to create interesting dialogue options with him and things that he could say when visiting Diamond City for the first time, or Good Neighbor. After returning the child to his family, it would have been great if you could tell the father and mother about the Minutemen, for example, to see if they would like to join the Minutemen so that you could turn the Peabody house into a settlement and set up wonderful defenses against the nearby gunners at Quincy. There was a wealth of potential with this encounter that I do think is a missed opportunity on Bethesda's part.
Well, as we know, man, Bethesda was just lazy. This was a cash grab.
But even as it is, the encounter certainly adds new lore to the Fallout universe and raises some interesting questions. I'd love to learn what you have to say about this encounter. Did you like it? Did you think that it fit into the world? Or did you find it more distracting than anything else? Can you name some instances in Fallout lore that this event contradicts? Or did you think that it was funny and you're just glad to be able to bring Bill Peabody back to his loving family? Let me know in the comments section below. I read all of your comments and I use them.
Okay, no, you don't need to lie to me, man. All right, well, I know how it is. All right, we don't need to listen to Oxhorn talk. I know some people, Oxhorn's not like a super well-liked guy, but you know what? He does make good lore videos, and I don't think, these already have, 14 million views, so one more isn't going to make a difference. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Oh, thanks to the patrons of Patreon. If you want some exclusive content, including some reviews that are just a little too spicy for YouTube, you want to check out the Patreon. Link is in the descriptions. I'll see you in the next one.